people of the United States.
More perfect.
Your form of our perfect union.
Heritage legal expert Hans von Spakovsky.
Well, that was Byron Donald submitting some text messages from a WhatsApp communication regarding Hunter and his communications with this Chinese business. Hans von Spakovsky with us now. Were you able to watch and take in some of the highlights or the whole thing with Tony Bobulinski in front of the Oversight Committee yesterday?
Yeah, it was quite something, wasn't it? Particularly when he got into it with Congresswoman AOC, as everyone likes to refer to her, having to correct her and instruct her on federal criminal law, the RICO Act. Look, the most important thing for people to understand is, yesterday's testimony was Mr. Bobulinski, but what he said is exactly the same as what other ex-partners of Hunter Biden have said. Devin Archer, Jason Galanis. Those folks have also given testimony, and every single one of them has consistently said what they were doing was selling the brand, and the brand was Joe Biden. And Joe Biden was involved in and did meet with the business prospects that they were trying to convince to give them business. And you don't get that kind of consistency on the other side. In fact, on the other side, as you know, you keep getting Hunter Biden, James Biden, Joe Biden caught in lies.
Yeah, it's the consistency of in this trial. I was just kind of talking about this before. The Democrats that were questioning Tony Bobulinski, all they wanted to be able to say, and it didn't matter what was happening in front of them, was that there was no evidence of any wrongdoing whatsoever on Joe Biden's part. Did you feel as though Tony Bobulinski's sworn testimony yesterday is factual evidence of Joe Biden committing crimes?
Well, yeah, in particular, since he's also got text messages involved. And, Bobulinski kept trying to explain that to the Congresswoman, and she just didn't want to listen. Yeah. She did not want to hear about it. In particular, at one point, Bobulinski mentioned FARA. That's the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which requires you to register with the Department of Justice if you are representing the interests of a foreign company, a foreign entity, foreign government. And none of the Bidens did that, including, by the way, Joe Biden after he left the vice presidency.
It's very frustrating to watch hypocrisy be on full display on a regular basis with this justice system that is going after Donald Trump at every possible, to the extreme, every possible turn. But then just the full-on agreement from the left that Joe Biden isn't capable of doing anything wrong. This is an impeachment inquiry, or they're looking to potentially impeach the president, and then they would go to the Senate, and that would carry on there once they pick that up. But is what Joe Biden did incredibly unethical? Is this a political crime, or is this a crime like what they're trying to do, get Donald Trump on, where there could be actual, real criminal consequences for his actions?
Well, what they've made clear in their testimony is this was an influence peddling operation, and it was unethical and unprofessional, basically, for Biden's family, with the participation of Joe Biden, to use his position as vice president to make money. The potential criminal violations come in under the fact that, like what we were just talking about, which is if you're doing something like that, if you're representing foreign entities, you've got to register. And if you don't, that's a criminal violation of the law. And yet it tells you something about this Justice Department that despite all of the blatant evidence that, for example, Hunter Biden was representing these foreign companies, including being on the board of the Ukrainian energy company, they still have not charged him with violating that law. It's like, what in the world are they waiting for? They got all the evidence they need to indict him for that.
Hans, if Donald Trump or Eric Trump would have done what Joe Biden and Hunter Biden did, would they have been charged?
Oh, yes. No, there's no question about that whatsoever. They would have been charged and indicted long ago. And here we have overwhelming evidence potentially of violations of the law, and nothing is happening, which again tells you what's wrong with the Justice Department being run by Merrick Garland and how political that department has become.
Hans von Spakovsky with us. He's a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Originally the idea that Hunter Biden was going to go, he was subpoenaed. He defied the subpoena. He went to the other side of the building to do a press conference to tell people he was defying the subpoena. Then he ends up sitting down and having that conversation with the committee. But he didn't show up today, and he yesterday. He threw a big hissy fit about it. I'll say everything I need to say in public. Why they're afraid of me? Where was he yesterday?
Well, apparently he was afraid to testify in public. But look, his going back and forth on this shows you how what is happening is that Hunter Biden, his lawyers, and I have no doubt with the help and advice of the White House, are doing everything they can to manipulate publicly what's going on with this and try to make the Republicans look bad for looking at it. Look, to show you just how serious this is and the evidence there, look, at one point, Bobulinski yesterday was reading from an email drafted for Hunter Biden that was all about having a board seat for a certain relation, which clearly was Joe Biden, on a firm, an investment firm connected with the Chinese Communist government. And the other significant thing he said was that in a conversation with James Biden, the first son, Bobulinski said all the Bidens talked about was having plausible deniability. In other words, they all knew what they were selling was Joe Biden, but they wanted everything to be deniable so that nobody could ever connect Joe Biden with what was happening. Look, that's the way mob operations work. That's exactly what they were doing. It was the same thing.
Hans von Spakovsky with us right now. When people say Joe Biden is the brand, Joe Biden is what they were selling, what would do we have examples of, evidence of what Joe Biden, how did he come through when the deal was done? What was Joe Biden's brand other than influence? Who was he influencing? What was he influencing?
Well, clearly the influence was to help these foreign companies when they got into the United States. And remember, one of the big companies that the Biden family established a relationship with was a big Chinese-owned energy company. And what they wanted was to be able to be in the United States, exploiting our energy reserves, buying up, gobbling up, same thing, buying up, gobbling up American energy companies, all of which would be terrible for the national security of the United States.
When Joe Biden is the vice president, which is when a lot of these deals were taking place, and Hunter Biden was flying on Air Force Two. Right. I would assume that the mere presence of the vice president of the United States carries a load of weight with it. But then does Joe Biden, he doesn't have to shake anybody down. He just advocates for the needs of the people that are doing business with him over the needs of the American people? Is that how that works?
Yeah, it is. And look, when your son is going on these foreign trips with the vice president, and what is he doing? Trying to negotiate profitable deals with these foreign companies, foreign individuals, members of the Chinese Communist Party. All of them are going, wow, this is the son of the vice president. Any kind of regulatory or legal hurdles that we might have, why obviously his father can smooth it over and make sure that we can operate easily, successfully in the U.S. and make money doing it. Why else would they do business with Hunter Biden? He had no other skills, certainly not as an investment advisor. And yes, that's what they were hiring him to do.
I want to shift gears before we let you go. Hans von Spakovsky with us right now. Fani Willis, that ruling came after we spoke with you last week, and my guess is that the way the judge returned his decision on Fani Willis and her ability to stay on the case with Nathan Wade having to depart was not exactly what you thought should have happened. I wanted you to tell us, where is this case right now, and what do you think of what the judge has done?
Well, the defendants in the case asked the judge to give them permission to immediately appeal his opinion to the Georgia Court of Appeals. They had to get the court's permission to do that because, this wasn't a final judgment. This was just an interim order in the prosecution. And the judge almost immediately gave them permission to do it. So all the defendants are appealing up to the next court, and what they're going to tell the court is look, just based on the findings of this judge, the conflict of interest, the appearance of impropriety, the unprofessional behavior, the odor of mendacity, that's the terminology he used, this judge did not go far enough. He should also have recused Fani Willis from the case and her entire office, and you, Court of Appeals, should order that this entire criminal prosecution be transferred to a different county DA's office. That's what they're going to ask for, and I would hope that the Court of Appeals would recognize the serious problems with allowing Fani Willis to continue to handle this case.
Well, I don't know nothing about nothing, Hans, but it almost makes me feel like this judge made a politically expedient ruling and decision and just kicked the door and left it cracked open on his way out after he was done. Because it seems as though what you're saying, Fani Willis could still be removed if the appeals court would require that. That all could still happen. It just wouldn't necessarily be done by this judge.
Oh, no, I think you've analyzed it perfectly. I think that's exactly what's going on. He kicked the case up to the Court of Appeals to let them take the potential political heat from the left, for example, if they actually kick her off the case. He only went halfway as far as he needed. He didn't go all the way, and he's letting the folks above him take responsibility for that.
But what he said in his ruling was devastating for Fani Willis and Wade, and it still seems like, just so I'm really clear, Fani Willis could still be removed off this case, and it could still be relocated in Georgia. That's correct.
That is exactly right, because that's what the defendants are asking the Court of Appeals to do.
Huh. What's the timeline on that? Do we know?
Well, I think the court is going to be very aware of the national attention being paid to this case and the fact that she keeps pushing, Fani Willis, keeps pushing to have the trial start as soon as possible. Yeah. So I think they'll act pretty quickly on this.
Oh, man, it's always the appeal, the foul ball of the legal system. It gets me every time. Hans, thank you for breaking it down for us. We love having you. We'll talk to you again next week.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yep, of course. Take care. Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation.